You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Braves POSTCAST, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Grant McAuley alongside Jake Mastroianni after what is and what will always be, from this point forward in the 2024 season, a must-win game for the Atlanta Braves that they were able to pick up a victory. They did so in somewhat dramatic fashion with a late rally to go ahead for good in the seventh inning and beat the Miami Marlins by a 6-2 score. May not be the toughest competition that they have faced, but again, necessary to pick up that win, even up this series, and give themselves a chance to take 2 out of 3 on Sunday. We'll, of course, talk about that, but we're going to go back through Saturday's game and talk about what the Braves were able to do to get themselves back on the right foot as the days of the 2024 season continue to tick down one by one to just over a week at this point. Lots to get to. Before we do, though, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta here on YouTube, and Locked On Braves, wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started on that. Well, Jake, as I just laid out, and as you and I have talked about quite a bit in recent weeks, every game's starting to feel like a must-win for the Atlanta Braves, but we have reached that territory where every game is a must-win for the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, got to have it. And this at least sets you up. No matter what happens on Sunday, you still go into that Met series controlling your own destiny. Of course, you'd love to not have to go in there and sweep that thing. But certainly, glad you got the win on Saturday and give a chance to hopefully pick up a game on Sunday.
Yeah, you got to have that one on Sunday, but had to have this one on Saturday first. That's the order that these things go in, and the Braves were able to take care of that. A 6-2 victory for Atlanta by the time all was said and done. And some big home runs. Go figure, the Braves hit some key home runs. That typically is how they score their runs and have some of their most important rallies highlighted by those. And the guy in the middle of it again was Matt Olson. We've talked a lot about him in recent weeks. And really the second half, the surge since the end of July, when it seemed like his season couldn't get much worse, all of a sudden things began to turn around for him. Maybe not sudden, but it has been consistent. And that's what he's been looking for all year. His 2-run homer, along with Gio Urshela's 2-run homer, after Max Fried had just gotten done tossing 6 innings of 2-run ball against the Marlins. You didn't want to waste that kind of a start, and you needed somebody to step up, and it was Matt Olson first and foremost.
It was Matt Olson, and it's been Matt Olson a lot here lately. And we've talked a lot about the struggles in the first half, particularly in the month of July. But even the first half was slow for a lot of hitters, not just for the Braves, but around Major League Baseball. But certainly Matt Olson among those where the power just wasn't there for him. But in this second half, he's really turned it on, and it's kind of crazy to think here he is, very close to getting 30 and 100 again. And with the season that he's had and the slow start that he got off to, and then the terrible month of July, for him to even be approaching that, seemed like it might not have a chance around the All-Star break. So it just speaks to the final 2-month stretch that he's had, and the Braves have needed every single bit of it. So, when you've needed your stars to step up here, whether it be Ozuna or Olson, both guys having a good game, they've done that.
Yeah, and I believe for Matt Olson now, last 49 games since July 31st, 49 runs batted in. If you're not going to run per game over the course of a season, Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a pretty good year. And it pretty much feels like what Matt Olson was doing a year ago. So the fact that it may have taken a while, a lot longer than he wanted it to, but it's finally course corrected. And as you pointed out, even a down year for Matt Olson could still be a pretty good year by most accounts. And you wondered when it was going to happen. And thankfully for the Braves, it's something that's been a big part of this last couple of months because they have needed each and every contribution from each and every player they could get it from. But I remember talking about this around that July slump and then maybe heading into the month of August. For things to truly turn around, it just felt like Matt Olson was going to be the linchpin of getting the Braves offense to start trending in the right direction again.
It was, because when we talk about this offense, and we obviously have discussed ad nauseum their inability to score runs, to manufacture runs. Well, one way to not have to worry about that is to have your big guys hit home runs and to score runs in that way. And not just the home runs, we talked about it too, it's the doubles. And, when he wasn't getting those home runs in those first couple of months, he was still getting a lot of doubles, especially in April and the early part of May. But those have kind of gone away too. So again, that's just what you need, obviously, from Matt Olson, from your number 4 hitter in the lineup. You need him driving in runs, something that he had a big cold stretch in this at the middle of the year. And as you said, he's been on about an RBI a game pace, which it's crazy to think that's just about what he did last year, almost 140 RBI last season. So again, it's been a great turnaround for him. And yeah, like you said, I mean, if there was going to be any chance of this Braves offense getting going down the stretch and in the second half, it was all going to start mostly with Matt Olson, because Ozuna's been consistent all year long. Mm-hmm. It was Olson, the kind of battery mate there in the middle, if you will, that really needed to get it going. So you have both of those guys in the middle of your order driving in runs.
Yeah, and really, it was going to come down to somebody not named Marcell Ozuna stepping up and doing the things they're capable of doing. And nobody outside of Ron Acuna Jr. had a bigger and better season, maybe in all the National League, offensively speaking, in my opinion, than what Matt Olson posted a year ago. I know there were some other guys that play for teams out on the West Coast that had very good years as well, not taking anything away from them. But when you have a 54-homer, 139-run batted in season, that's going to be about as good as it gets for most players. And that just wasn't the way that things were shaping up for Matt Olson over the first nearly 4 full months of the season, and especially in the frustrations of his July. But that has turned around, and it did take, as you pointed out, those big swings to help the Braves win this game that was, as they all are right now, a must-win. You had Max Fried pitching another quality start for a Braves starter, which is not surprising whatsoever. There have been so many of these throughout the course of the season. And, regardless of how it happened, you needed to win this game. But it would be a real shame to have Max Fried go out there, give you this kind of start, and the offense be unable to figure out a way to solve the Miami Marlins kind of patchwork pitching staff. And that might be being polite.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, a AAA, whatever you want to call it, they're not throwing out a bunch of Cy Young candidates, and the Braves have struggled against them in the first 2 games of this series, but they were able to get to them late. And, like you said, Max Fried comes out there and does what you kind of expect him to do in this type of situation where your back's against the wall, you're facing a team that you need to beat, and Max Fried goes out there and gives you 6 strong innings of 1 earned run. I know you get the unearned run there too in the 6th that was big to tie the game up, but he did what you needed him to do, exactly what you needed him to do, and he was Max Fried. And look, we don't know how this season's going to turn out, Grant. That we may be seeing one of the last games of Max Fried in a Braves uniform too. So, but he's certainly delivered time and time again. He's been one of my favorite Braves pitchers, certainly the last 20 years. But Max Fried's been really, really good. Hopefully, we see many more starts from him this season at least.
Yeah, it would be nice to see quite a few more from Max Fried, but we all know what it will take to get a few more of those. I guess as the math works out right now, this may be his next to last, his penultimate start in a Braves uniform, just based on, as you just pointed out, the fact that we are knocking on the door at the end of the season. If you want to have a few more after that, he'll certainly take them. And I think he would like to also, Jake, if we're throwing the what ifs out there, get into the postseason healthy and pitching the way he has, really since his slow start at the beginning of the year, kind of that inexplicable little run that he had at the open of the season, which kind of ruins your ERA for quite a while. But he's been pitching very good baseball for a while and has been able to kind of turn that around. But you might look at the stats and be kind of unimpressed by it. But if you've watched him throughout the course of the year, it's been Max Fried, and you'd love to see him. And I'm sure he would love to see that opportunity to get into October healthy, not having to worry about a blister issue, not having to worry about the flu or whatever else was going on in 2022, and just get back to helping the Braves win some important games. But in order for that to happen, you had to win games like today, and you needed Max Fried to help you do that.
Max Fried's the ultimate competitor. He's going out there. I'm sure he is not worried or anything about what's going to happen in the offseason. He is worried about getting this Braves team to the postseason and hopefully pitching for them for a while. And again, you've had 2 kind of rough patches for Max Fried this year. The beginning of the season, he had a couple of rough starts there. I'm still upset about the missed call to Castellanos, but and then you had the rough start, coming out of the All-Star break where he missed some games there, and it took him a little bit to get going then. But outside of that, I mean, it's been Max Fried. Outside of that, it's been a low 3 ERAs type of pitcher, which is what we've seen from Max Fried just about every year that he's been healthy.
Yeah, and I think that Max, being a union rep and understanding, what free agency is, as all players obviously do understand what that means, especially as they approach it and get the opportunity perhaps to get out there and test it out. He has done a really nice job of putting all that on the back burner. I've heard him be asked about it beginning back in spring training, and his focus has remained on, let me do what I need to do in 2024. That's my goal. That's the team's goal. And that's what I'm going to focus on. So honestly, he has, I feel like, done a great job of just kind of minimizing that noise, not allowing it to be a distraction. It's impossible to say, you're never thinking about it, but I do think he does a good job of prioritizing that. And that's one of the ways that you're going to go out and have success, is not letting your mind wander to things that you can't control. Speaking of things you can't control, the Braves are still 2 games behind the New York Mets, who picked up another win against the Philadelphia Phillies on Saturday. So that third wild card, there's still 2 games out there. Diamondbacks also won. The Padres were beating up on the Chicago White Sox. So I don't know if you want to hold out too much hope there as we record late on a Saturday evening. But the Braves must control what they can at this point, and that means winning a series in Miami. That means making the most of their head-to-head against the New York Mets. And that means not letting off the gas, because the Kansas City Royals, a club that's all of a sudden scuffling and in a fight for its playoff life as well, is going to be rolling in to close out the season. So we'll have a lot to talk about when we get to that a little bit later on in this edition of the Postcast. When we come back, though, we'll talk a bit more about Max Fried, some of the big offensive standouts in this win over the Marlins, and get you set up for the finale, which comes your way on Sunday as the Braves Postcast continues. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance: superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home those huge wins. ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is available only in the U.S. Well, let's get inside the line score and box score of this game for the Braves, who got back in the win column, thankfully, because, goodness, losing a series in Miami, which obviously they've got some work to do on Sunday to make sure it doesn't happen, but going in and dropping these first 2 would have really set the Braves back in a way I don't think that they want to truly think about or have to face. And obviously Saturday's win goes a long way towards pushing that off. Atlanta now 84-71 on the year, 6 runs on 14 hits, 1 error, and 10 men left on base. Marlins 2 runs, 6 hits, no errors, and they left 6 men on base. Max Fried picks up the win. He is 10-10 now on the year with 6 innings of 2-run ball, 1 of those earned. Picard takes the loss in relief for the Miami Marlins. No save in this game, which lasted 2 hours and 43 minutes at a place called loanDepot Park. So for Max Fried, again, as we've talked about, the performances that he has been able to give, by and large, for pretty much since stepping into the Braves rotation back in 2018, 2019, especially when he got that opportunity to really, I think, establish himself as a big league starter. You kind of count on him to go out and give you these kind of outings at the very least. 6 innings, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, 5 hits, an unearned run that came across against him on a throwing error by Ozzie Albies in that 6th inning. It felt like for a moment, Jake, because the margin of error is so incredibly thin, you just didn't want to look at that and say, is that going to be one of the plays that sinks the Braves against a club that they need to beat, should beat, and as it turned out, were able to find a way to beat?
Yeah, glad that wasn't, kind of the turning point in the game there with the way the season's gone. Certainly you feel that when it happens. And, Ozzie just coming back, and like, I'm not trying to make this about Ozzie and Witt, but you've seen Witt make that play a lot. He certainly has done a great job of turning those double plays. Matt's also going to tell you he needs to scoop that baseball too. But either way, it doesn't end up hurting the Braves as they come right back, including that guy, Matt Olson, comes right back and takes the lead. But Max Fried doing, like we said earlier, exactly what you need to do against this competition. And you got your ace pitcher, one of your ace pitchers on the mound to come out and give you 6 strong innings like that and keep your team in the game and allow that offense a chance here late. But yeah, that moment there in the game certainly felt like it. So glad Max Fried was able to get things kind of under control for the most part. He's, struggled to give it the run in the first inning, but after that was his dominant self. The curveball and changeup were really working in this one. 14 of his 15 whiffs in this game came on those 2 pitches. So I thought he had great command of both of them, and just a, typical Max Fried outing, what we expect. 83.3 mile per hour average X velocity against. He gets a ton of weak contact, a ton of ground balls, but he was getting the whiffs today too, like I said, with that curveball and changeup.
Yeah, and you want that swing and miss when you're Max Fried as well. It just makes you that much more dangerous when you limit the hard contact and you get those strikeouts. It's what's made him one of the best left-handers in baseball over the last 5 or 6 years now. Fried only 10-10 on the year, as I just mentioned. I know he's had those ups and downs we talked about, but that record still surprises me, Jake, because he's pitched well enough to win more than 10 games, even with some of the lows that he had to navigate early, and then with regard to the injury at midseason, that kind of slowing him down a bit. But when you think about some of the performances by the Braves offense, you can understand why maybe those 10 wins are where they are, and maybe why those 10 losses, hard luck as some may be, are also sitting where they are.
Yeah, the 10 losses, I think, sticks out to me more so than the 10 wins. The 10 wins I could see because I'm sure the offense has let them down plenty of times, but I think it goes back to that margin of error for Brave starters this year. I mean, it doesn't have to be a blow-up, terrible start for you to take a loss. And so I think that's probably come into play a lot for Max Fried as well. So, yeah, 10 losses for a guy who's got a 3.45 ERA and has pitched really well outside of, like I said, maybe a handful of starts, 2 to begin the year, 2 after coming off the IL. Has been really good outside of that. So, yeah, 10 losses, pretty surprising for Max Fried.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's just not the kind of thing that you would feel like is typically, it's not Max Fried-esque, if that's the way to do it. As you look at what he's been able to do, though, over his course of his career with the Braves, you expect him to be part of, these kinds of games, to do a lot, be more of a net positive, obviously, than looking at those 10 losses and thinking, well, he's not really pulling his weight. Obviously, we know the one-loss record of a pitcher, that doesn't really explain all of their value, that's for sure. Matt Olson, meanwhile, closing in on a 30-homer, 100 RBI campaign. That would have sounded like crazy talk, even in, I would say, the All-Star break, for that matter, because he was on pace, I think, at that point for somewhere between 21 and maybe 23 homers at most, somewhere around 70 to 75 runs batted in. The rest of the month of July did not go so well for him, but all of a sudden, he has really figured it out. As I mentioned, last 49 games, he's knocked in 49 total runs. He's got 29 homers and 97 runs batted in with 7 games to go. After his go-ahead homer and 3 more runs knocked in against the Marlins on Saturday, Matt Olson, quite simply, continues to build some momentum here down the stretch, and it couldn't come at a better time for the Atlanta Braves, who need him and the supporting cast to really play their best baseball at this point because, as Apollo Creed would say, there is no tomorrow.
Yeah, it might not be for the Atlanta Braves if they can't pull out a bunch of wins here down the stretch, but Matt Olson's doing everything that he can. And Ozuna as well, he has 3 hits and a walk, and Matt Olson 2 hits and a walk. That's what you need from those guys. We talked about it with everybody that's missing in the lineup. It really puts a lot of pressure on Ozuna and Olson to deliver when they come up in big spots. And you saw Matt Olson do that today, not just with the home run, but driving in a runner as well with a hit. So coming up clutch. He had 8 home runs in August. Then he had a little bit of a dry spell to begin September, at least from the home runs. But now he has 4 home runs in his past 5 games. So you're starting to see the long ball come back into play. And so just great to see for a guy that really needed to get it going, as we talked about, to help this Braves offense down the stretch.
Yeah, Matt Olson has been front and center there. Jorge Soler, meanwhile, after sliding down in the order, something we can revisit perhaps a little bit later in the show, but after being moved out of the 2 spot, a big home run for him. Obviously, the defense can be a question. I know that, obviously, as you can see just about every time, and we've talked about this a lot with Orlando Arcia, Sean Murphy, and others, like the ball will find you. And in fact, the ball does seem to find Jorge Soler at least every other day or so. And it doesn't have to be an out-and-out error. It doesn't have to be an out-and-out missed catch every single time. A bad route, a bad read. It'll look in the box score like it's a hit. Maybe it was a ball that was going to be playable for him. First inning, I felt like another example of that, but a big home run to tie things up. That is kind of the yin and the yang, I guess, of having Jorge Soler in this lineup, is the fact that, yeah, they can be a little bit shaky, but he can also do things to affect the game the way that he did with that long home run.
Yeah, and that's what, obviously when they went and got him, you knew you were going to have to put him in the outfield. Marcell Ozuna is going to be the DH. He's going to be in there every single night. So when you trade for Jorge Soler, you know what you're trading for, and you know the deficiencies that he has in the outfield. But you also were banking on a guy that could come in and spark this offense and get them going. And he's had his ups and downs since coming over, but definitely as of late, past week and a half, he's really started to show signs of being that guy and being more of a, as you talked about with Max Fried, being a net positive. And I think he has been that offensively, but certainly you're just going to have to live with some of those mistakes in the outfield and just hope that he makes up for it at the plate. And this game he did.
Yeah, no, he has done that a handful of times and swinging the bat really well over the past now 11 games as he hit his 4th home run and is batting well over 300 over that stretch. In fact, OPSing well over 1,200 over his last 11 games. That, as they say, will play. Gio Urshela also a homer. That came in the 7th inning. Insurance runs are certainly nice. And Jake, as we've talked about, it's not just going to be about Matt Olson and Marcell Ozuna and Jorge Soler and Michael Harris, who I'll get to in a moment. You're going to have some guys that contribute toward the bottom of that order. And Gio Urshela could be one of those guys.
And he has been one of those guys. He talked about it here over the last this week at least, I know he's really started to turn things on at the plate. And, a lot of people are wondering, is Whit Merrifield going to take over him at third base? But he's played exceptional defense over there, and now he's starting to hit for you a little bit too. So great to see that from him. And look at, these replacement players that are coming in. Ramon Laureano had 2 more hits in this game. We talked about Whit Merrifield and the job he's done, and Gio Urshela too. So, again, got to give a lot of credit to Alex Anthopoulos and this staff for bringing some of these guys in, and credit to them for coming with an opportunity and making the most of it.
I looked up what Ramon Laureano has been doing because he has become the de facto left fielder for this club at this point. I really don't think you can make an argument about giving him too many days off. Coming into Saturday, where, as you just mentioned, he had 2 more hits. In his last 36 games, Ramon Laureano hitting .333 with 7 homers and 20 runs knocked in. That will also play, and that is why he's getting that playing time on top of that. Real quick, Michael Harris, I don't want to steal your thunder with the hard hit balls because I'm sure you saw the same thing I did, but 4 100-plus exit velocities, another 3-hit game. He's really finding himself and his swing at the exact right time because just over a week or so ago, you and I were sitting here doing this show, and I was looking at it since he'd come off the IL and saying a .265 on base percentage is not really what you want in the leadoff spot, and it is no longer what is happening in the leadoff spot. Michael Harris II turned the corner as well.
Yeah, not to be pessimistic on what's obviously been a great run here for Michael Harris, but still would like to see him get a little bit better stealing bases. Just, hasn't been able to get it done this year. But, the hard hits, as you said, it feels like every night it's 3, 4 hard hits for Michael Harris, and he's starting to get some results with those hard hits as well. Is great to see. It's been one of those seasons. We can go back to the beginning of the year where there was much more optimism. And I know you and I were both very high on the season for Michael Harris, but kind of the second year in a row where injuries have kind of held him back from having that big year. So again, I'm obviously very, very excited about Michael Harris. I want to stay healthy for a full year and see what this kid can do, because I think the sky's the limit for him.
Yeah, and getting a chance to see him get on one of these streaks just reminds you, in a season that has been marred by injury, the worst of any that he's dealt with in his young major league career. I mean, 2 solid months taken away by that hamstring strain. Good to see him swinging the bat this way at the time that he is for the Braves, because they certainly need him to help set the tone at the top of the order.
And 2 great defensive plays too, Grant, which we're obviously accustomed to seeing every night.
You've always got to, look out for that and account for that, because even when Michael Harris is not hitting, he has a chance to affect the game in that way. And that's what makes him, I feel like, a 5-tool player. And I'm with you. I do think the stolen bases are going to come, maybe, and some small part of it is just maybe thinking about a season in which you've lost a couple of months due to a leg injury. I don't really know, but it doesn't seem to be slowing him down either way. And the Braves need him to do his thing at the top of the order to help set that tone. When we come back, we'll share a few more thoughts on Saturday's win. Obviously, look a little bit more into the wild card and get you set up for Game 3 of the series, which comes your way on Sunday. That will be next on the Braves Postcast. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, and this weekend we have a little something different for you, because now through Sunday, September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a free 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and download America's #1 sports book today. Well, the Mets beat up on the Phillies today, so the Braves are still down by 2 games with 7 to play for that third wild card. We're definitely hoping that the Philadelphia Phillies were going to be a bit more helpful, but I think we have learned, Jake, over the past, really since the start of June, that the New York Mets have figured it out. Whatever their version, whatever their formula is for winning, it may not have been expected, but they have done an awful lot of it, and they're doing it here lately without their best player, Francisco Lindor, who has still been unavailable and, as of now, not expected to play on Sunday. And the earliest he could be back is Tuesday against the Braves, but it doesn't sound like a very optimistic appraisal here lately for Francisco Lindor, who is dealing with a lingering back issue.
And credit to the Mets for just keeping on what they've been doing. And I think that, again, says a lot about that team and how they played and how they figured things out to be this team that they are. Look, if they get in over the Braves, they absolutely deserve it and earn it because of, the season that they've had, and just, it was a season where they didn't think they were going to do much and thought they'd be big sellers at the deadline. And then here they are, certainly fighting for a playoff spot. And like I said, well deserving of one with the way that they played in the second half of this season. So it's going to be a tough test. And, you're going to have that head-to-head matchup again, which gives the Braves a little bit of hope. But that Mets team seems to be really rolling. I also think this was a hangover game for the Phillies as they clinched the postseason the night before. I was hoping maybe they'd wait until they clinched the division. But either way, obviously, they still got something to play for, trying to get one of those top 2 seeds and that top seed overall. And it's going to be a big game on Sunday because the Braves would love to go into that with just one game back of the Mets.
Yeah, that home field advantage, what the Phillies are playing for. Dodgers 92-62 as we record this. Phillies, meanwhile, 92-63 after their loss to the Mets. So neck and neck here with about a week to go as far as that's concerned. Padres, meanwhile, have won back-to-back games and are up on the White Sox and could add another to that tally. And the Arizona Diamondbacks have won 4 in a row. Mets and Braves also both winners on Saturday. So not a ton of change in those wild card standings. And Jake, that's one of the things that you got to factor in is, outside of a head-to-head battle with a wild card foe, which the Braves are about to get against the New York Mets, and the Padres and Diamondbacks will have in the final 3 games of the season, you really don't have a ton of opportunities to know for sure that you're going to win on a day your opponent's going to lose. That's kind of part of the math, part of the calculus here over the final, 7 games now.
And like I said this on the podcast the other day, if the Braves are going to get in, they're definitely going to have to earn it because all of these other teams are playing great baseball. The Diamondbacks are a good team. I just talked up the Mets and how well they've been playing. Obviously, the Padres are at the top of the wild card right now, and they got a big series coming up with the Dodgers. They're not quite out of the division race yet either. So all of these teams playing really good baseball, and the Braves are going to have to earn it. But like I've been saying, you have that head-to-head against the Mets, which gives you a hope, and it allows you to still control your destiny. But obviously you'd love to go into that series back just 1 game because then you win the series, you tie it up, and you get the season series over the Mets, which gives you that tiebreaker. But it's obviously going to be a big series come next week. And again, want to make sure you try to get the win on Sunday and hope that you get some help from the Phillies. So you got a little bit closer edge going into it.
Yeah, if you take 2 out of 3, you do pick up just 1 game on the New York Mets, but you do secure the tiebreaker should you need that. And when you look at that final series of the season, it's the Brewers who the Mets will be facing. That's not going to be an easy task. For the Braves, it's the Kansas City Royals, a club that has played very well, been a surprise club in baseball this season, but they're kind of spitting and sputtering towards this finish line as well and had lost 6 in a row through Saturday. So they've got to sort some things out, and the Braves will be seeing them in the not-too-distant future as well. But when you look at the outcomes, the possible outcomes, and we can spend a lot more time talking about this after Sunday's game, but for the Braves, you take 2 out of 3, you pick up a game, you get that tiebreaker. You sweep the series, obviously, that's a full 3-game swing. But all of those outcomes also in play on the other side for the New York Mets. So if you're down 2, you're not really going to be able to get out of there with the true tie, as it were, because of the nature of a 3-game series.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we talked about it. The Braves have to win every game at this point, but particularly in that series, it's a series you cannot lose. At the very least, you have to win the series, but a sweep would obviously go a long way just because of where you put yourself. You're going to be back at least 2 or at least 1 game, if not more than that going into it. So again, it's why the Braves have a chance, but you have to go in there and get it done.
Yeah, and we'll see if they're able to do that, and we'll talk a lot more about that on Sunday as we get you set for that. Ozzie Albies 1 for 5, did have the throwing error in this game as well, just 1 for 10 since his comeback. He was installed in the number 2 spot, which I know we touched on after the loss yesterday, but I still just couldn't help but have that lingering thought, that Jorge Soler has been swinging the bat so well here lately. Wouldn't you like to have him? And I know you need hitters in the middle of the order, and I think I said this yesterday, so pardon me for being a broken record with it, but wouldn't you like to have Jorge Soler getting the most plate appearances possible at this time? I feel like that's half of it. And then there's a half of me that kind of feels bad that Whit Merrifield, in the midst of everything that's been going on, played, I feel like, admirably at second base every day. And he's just not going to be able to do that when Ozzie's back. And I'm not making an argument that Ozzie shouldn't come back and shouldn't try to help the team. But you just kind of feel for Whit because that dude played through a broken foot to help the Braves bridge this gap. And now it seems like he's kind of the odd man out based on the fact that I just don't know where and if and how much he can factor on the left side of the infield. And with the foot, he can't go play the outfield. And even if he could, it doesn't seem like there's even a spot there for him. Even if you'd like to have him defensively over Jorge Soler, you got to have Jorge's bat in the lineup.
You do. And again, it is unfortunate for Whit, who's given a lot to this Braves team this year, but it is a guy with a broken foot. So, I mean, you kind of understand that. I hope the Braves can bring him back next year. It's an $8 million team option, but love having that veteran presence. And again, just that fire and intensity that he has to win. And again, hopefully the Braves can get him to the postseason in this. But yeah, I don't think they were going to change it the day after, even if maybe they felt like it was a mistake. But either way, I'm with you. We talked about it yesterday. I don't understand the decision to push Ozzie back in the 2 spot, a guy that hasn't played in 2 weeks and having to bat from the right side all the time, 2 months, and having to, bat from the right side only. Just, it didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, definitely one of the more strange. And look, the criticism comes with the GM's job, the manager's job, all of that stuff, and it's all fair game. And, a lot of times I try to kind of see, all right, well, this is how I see it. Maybe this is what their rationale is for it. And as I've talked about, controlling the things you can control, well, the things that they decide to do are not really things you can control. So, not really getting too twisted about it, but there are certainly areas where you would like to see that change maybe recognized and maybe happen. And perhaps this will be something that is adjusted, because for the Braves to do what they need to do, let me put it this way as well, to play devil's advocate, you probably are going to need Ozzie Albies to play a good role in that. And him walking back through that door is as close as it's going to get to there being some reinforcements down this stretch. And he's been an important and integral part of everything the Braves have accomplished in the last 6 years. You want to go to war with that guy, and hopefully he'll be able to start swinging the bat well from the right side. Atlanta, meanwhile, swinging some momentum back as much as they can. Friday's loss still hurts. Must take this series on Sunday. Jake, I think it's safe to say this is the most important start in the brief big league career, as long as he did wait, as Grant Holmes faces Miami in this finale.
Yeah, going to be a big start for Grant Holmes here. Obviously, the injuries, create this opportunity for Grant Holmes, who's been good. And again, his last time out, 4 innings, 2 runs. I mean, obviously we'd love to get a little bit more out of him, but I think just where you ended the season, I think you probably take that. It's got to be a game. You're facing a guy with a 7.64 ERA. Offense has got to win this game for you, no matter what Grant Holmes does. And hopefully he gives you some solid innings on the mound and keeps the team in it. But it's got to be one of those games where the offense is just able to pick you up.
Yeah, and maybe set the tone for it in that way. I mean, Grant Holmes, we were expecting to throw 60, 65 pitches last time out against Cincinnati. He threw close to 80, and that was his first start in, I believe, more than a month. So it had been a minute. He'd worked himself up to 7 innings, which is impressive, but, dialing it back up. If you're Grant Holmes, you waited 10 years to get to the big leagues. You're not going to, turn away from any opportunity to go out there and pitch on a major league mound and help your team win. And I do know he's going to go out there with that particular mindset for sure. Holmes is 2-1, 3.84 ERA. Darren McKagan is going to be on the mound for the Marlins. No record, 7.64 ERA, as those two righties square off at 1:40 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday at loanDepot Park. That's going to bring us to the end of this edition of the Braves Postcast. As always, we appreciate you riding along with us. Make sure that you're subscribed to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube. Leave us your likes and comments. Share the show with a friend, and subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast. Once again, the Braves able to even up the series against the Miami Marlins, and look for 2 out of 3 on Sunday, as they very much need it in advance of that showdown with the New York Mets that is looming on Tuesday at Truist Park. For Jake Mastroianni, I'm Grant McAuley. We will catch you next time, and until then, so long, everyone.